Hi, everybody, and welcome to another fan meetups, care of Fan Expo Canada in Toronto. I'm one of your hosts for today, one of your fan meetup ambassadors. I'm Jeremy Johnston.
And I'm Angelo Corsina.
Uh, we usually like to put together a family-friendly Dungeons and Dragons talk about once a month. And actually, last month we were at Fan Expo, Angelo.
We were. It was a pretty good time. We had a lot of fun at the con. We ran D&D Adventures League. It was a good time.
Yeah, we it was a bit short notice, but we were able to pull off about 5 or 6 tables at peak. And we even had some people volunteer to be dungeon masters, like kind of last minute,
That
including
was that was really crazy. But yeah,
yeah. um and yeah, we had a lot of cool visitors. We had some streamers show up, we had some people come up dressed in their Hellfire stuff, as well as some cosplayers doing some photo shoots in the D&D room.
it was a good time. We had the
Yep.
Dungeon Dudes, Careful Cantrip.
Yep.
We had a bunch of different streamers show up and say hi.
Yeah, so no, it was great. I guess the next big event from Fan HQ is going to be Toronto Comic Con, local to the GTA.
hmm
So we're looking forward to that. That's usually the last weekend of the March break. And then, of course, following that, it'll be another Fan Expo. So hopefully we'll, see people at those events. All right. So the other thing, of course, we work on a community group local to the GTA called Unite the Factions. You can find us at unitethefactions.com. We're actually putting on an event this weekend that's pretty full. I think there's only like one spot left,
Mm.
in person only. We're running about 7 tables of D&D, running an epic. So again, you can check us out on unitethefactions.com, where we love to talk about Adventurers League, which is the official organized play campaign for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. All right, so intro's done. Without further ado, what are we talking about today, Angelo?
We are talking about Spelljammer. Now, I personally love Spelljammer. I've been having a lot of fun just kind of tinkering with some of the mechanics, looking at some of the new races and such, and I'm pretty excited to talk about it, actually.
Totally. And we've played it a bit too, right?
We did. We were
We did.
actually very fortunate that we were able to get a sneak peek of this stuff, playtesting it, and had a ball playtesting it. It was one of those things that I was just dying to talk about after that playtest because it was so good.
Totally. All right. So we figured we'd start with just a bit of history. And of course, if you have any questions, you can throw them in the chat if you're here live, or, if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free. And we will do our best to answer stuff. And if you have, cool links or other things you'd like to add, feel free to toss those in as well. So yeah, Spelljammer's got a lot of love. There's been a lot of surveys, during the era that we're in right now for 5th edition, asking for what settings people have wanted. Most of the published hardcover adventures for 5th edition have been in the Forgotten Realms, which generally takes place on the Sword Coast of a single continent of the planet of Toril. But Spelljammer, is one of those that's been asked for quite a while, because it was only published as a setting book once in 2nd edition in late 1989. So more than 30 years later, here we are with another kind of setting book. But for 5th edition, they gave us 3 books, and
They did. They gave us the Astral Adventurer's Guide, Boo's Astral Menagerie, and The Light of Xeraxis.
yeah, so Astral Adventures Guide has a lot of the rules and mechanics for how playing Dungeons and Dragons in space works, because that's what Spelljammer is all about. Boo's Astral Menagerie is a book all about the monsters and denizens that you might find traveling through space. It's also named after a miniature giant space hamster.
Yeah, so Minx is the renowned ranger that is a kind of like fixture and kind of like one of the like folk heroes of the Forgotten Realms. And Boo is his lovable companion.
Or is it the other way around? I don't know, but yeah, so it's a cool spin on a lot of the other books that use famous characters' names, from the realms and such. And then yeah, the third book in the 3-book set that you buy is called Light of Xeraxis. It's a short adventure book, but we'll get into it a little bit later. But just at a high level, it obviously is going to take you into space. It starts at 5th level and it ends around level 8 or 9. So, for a lot of people, we've been saying it's super short, but it's definitely a great platform to kick off, any other campaign that you might like to run.
Mixing them together, kind of adding stuff to your own.
Exactly.
Sky's the limit, literally.
And beyond. And beyond, yeah, totally. So we did get some new races in the book, so we figured we'd do a bit of a rundown on each of those.
Yeah, it's a good place to start. New character options are always fun and exciting, and the first one that we have on the table is the Astral Elf. So the Astral Elf, it's humanoid. They are considered an elf for any of the kind of like feats like elven accuracy or any of the features that kind of rely on that are in any of the source books. They get spell casting. They get the choice of dancing light, or sacred flame, and they get to choose their spellcasting modifier for it between intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, which is kind of cool. It gives them a little bit of versatility, even at level 1, where you can be, say, a fighter and have access to a ranged sacred flame cantrip, which is always handy if you're a melee martial class. Your speed is 30 feet. You're a medium-sized creature. You have dark vision like any of the other elves, as well as the Fey ancestry feature.
Yep.
Where they start to differ. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say you also get the keen senses or the free perception skill.
Where they do, then they kind of have a similar thing to the Eladrin, where they have Starlight Step, which is kind of like pretty much exactly like Phase Step, except that you can only do it to yourself, whereas now Spring Eladrin can Phase Step other people, which is kind of cool. But you can magically teleport 30 feet to an unoccupied space. You can see it's like a Misty Step that doesn't require spell casting, can't be counterspelled.
Yeah.
And much like a lot of the other elves, they also get to trance as opposed to sleep. They get that 4-hour-long rest in, which is always nice.
Yeah, and just like the new rules that we got with the new Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse book, because I can't not say it that way. We don't have to worry about the stats. You can bump one stat by +2, another by +1, and a lot of what we're seeing here about this particular elf has been attributed to the elves in that book as well, with regards to changing the proficiency after doing the trance and such.
Yeah, it's always fun that they get to do that. I really like that addition.
And the fact that whenever anybody chooses a spell, they always get to choose what stat they're going to base their spell casting on, which I would expect to see with the new player's handbook for 1D&D as well.
Yeah, that's going to be probably a fixture that they've been kind of playing with that I don't see them changing, because versatility is usually very popular.
Totally. Yeah, it's great to see these changes, because these races can be then any class that you want, without
you don't feel pigeonholed.
Things. Exactly. Because the old pigeonhole of dwarves aren't really wizards, was kind of a thing.
No, that's not a thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, only if you're kind of a min-maxer, but it's still a.
It always just kind of felt like you were pushed into a certain classes.
Yeah, totally.
Whereas now you can do anything, which is always nice.
Yeah. So the second race is Autognome. So the Autognomes are like mechanical gnomes. They're built by rock gnomes, but because of whatever you'd like to put into your backstory, you kind of go out on your own and become sentient and all that kind of stuff. So your creature type is actually construct. You are small, but luckily you have a speed of 30, which is nice because most small creatures have a reduced speed.
Mhm.
Like a lot of different races, you get kind of armor for free. So you have an armor class of 13 plus your dex modifier when you're not wearing armor. And, goes without saying, but I'll kind of say it like Jeremy always does, Jeremy Crawford, you can only have one calculation for your AC. So choose one. Is it going to be this feature, or is it going to be a spell or some other armor that you're wearing? Or other class feature you
It's
get
kind
to
of nice
choose.
because they basically get permanent free mage armor, which is good.
Exactly. Yeah, it's actually pretty nice. You wouldn't have to cast it if you wanted to be an autonome wizard, which I think would actually kind of be a cool combo.
I would too. Because that does sound kind of fun.
Yeah, just story wise, I'm Pinocchio and now I want to go to school and become a wizard. That's that
Show up at
sort of
Strixhaven because why not?
Oh my gosh, Strixhaven. Yeah. I don't think we did a show on Strixhaven, did we?
We didn't.
Oh,
But
shoot, we got
anyway,
to
so
do one.
the interesting thing with auto gnomes that that I really like that they put in is that because they're constructs, a lot of the spells that clerics and other classers would have access to don't actually work on them to heal them. Except they actually did it very intelligently and put in that cure wounds, healing word, mass cure wounds, mass healing word, and spare the dying, which all normally wouldn't be able to target constructs, will all work to heal the little autonomes.
Yeah, I wish they would have just given it a blanket statement.
Because it doesn't give them access to things like heal,
no, or some spells from some other books like Withering Bloom.
Wither and Bloom, which is from Strixhaven.
Yeah, so but yeah, you also have advantage on saving throws against being paralyzed and poisoned. You have resistance to poison damage. You have immunity to disease, and you don't need to eat, drink, or breathe. So that's pretty bonkers.
And then, much like Warforged, which is like this, what this is somewhat similar to, you sentries rest instead of sleeping, and that's how you get your long rest. I've also got a neat little feature called Built for Success, which is basically like you get to add a D4 to an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw after seeing the D20 roll, but knowing before the effects are stated, and you can do so a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. It's kind of like an emboldening bond or a guidance or a bless, something along those lines.
I think an artificer would be cool for this race as well.
It feels very natural because mending also heals you. Artificers tend to get mending.
But still, you'd be able to build stuff potentially if your DM is okay with it.
Well, I mean, like even if your DM which is just no, just follow the rules as written. You play an artificer and you kind of flavor that anyway.
Exactly.
Because you play an armor artificer and kind of flavor that.
Yep. Exactly.
Clockwork Soul Sorcerers be another one. That's a good point, Diana.
Totally. Yeah, it would totally fit too if you want to flavor things that way. All right. Well, the next one, although I don't know, I got to be honest, I'd never heard of them really before this book. I think a lot of people have been waiting for the GIF to show up as a playable race. So it was awesome to see it in this book. What are the GIF, Angelo? What do they look like?
They are the adorable hippopotamus people, basically. They are the black powder masters of the Astral Sea.
Totally. Yeah, they have a storied history of having military structures or being kind of honorable, loud. Love singing about their stuff. They're spacefaring sailors after all, for a lot of them. And yes, they are humanoid hippos, and they do have a creature type of humanoid.
They do.
Yeah, they also have a swimming speed on top of a walking speed of 30.
Which I thought was kind of clever and cute because they're look like hippopotamus.
Totally. Of course, their size is medium. They also have something called Astral Spark. So they have a psychic connection to the astral plane, which we'll actually talk about shortly, that basically allows them to channel that into their weapons. So when you hit a target with a simple or martial weapon, You can cause the target to take some extra force damage equal to your proficiency bonus, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, it's like
That said,
Hexblade's Curse, but much more limited.
yes, but of course, in terms of being OP, you can use this trait a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. You can use it no more than once per turn.
Yeah.
So, and then you get it all back on a long rest. So, a little bit of fun stuff there.
Yeah, the really cool thing is that if your DM allows it, which is in Spelljammer, if you're getting to play this race, they're probably going to be allowed. But
totally.
they allow you to basically ignore the loading property and have all proficiencies with firearms, which is not something you see a lot of in D&D. I saw a little bit in what's it called, the
Waterdeep.
Dragon Heist. That's the one. That's the one I was looking for.
That's
And
great.
but other than that, you don't see them too much in any of the other adventures. And they basically have a weird combination of some of the stuff from Crossbow Expert and some of the stuff from Sharpshooter that are kind of like amalgamated. So so long range doesn't impose disadvantage, and they ignore the loading property just innately, which is really nice.
Yeah, no, I like it. And because they're hippos, they have a hippo build. They have advantage on strength-based ability checks and saving throws, which is pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, it's one of those things that doesn't come up very often. When it does, you're going to be very happy to have that.
Yeah, and counting one size larger when determining capacity of what you can push, drag, or lift.
Next on the list, we have the Hadazi, which are very interesting. They've updated these a couple of times because originally their glide feature was quite strong. But
totally.
Start from the top. Creature type humanoid. They are medium or small. You get to choose, kind of like they did with a lot of the races in Monsters of the Multiverse. And they have a speed of 30 feet, and they have a climbing speed equal to their walking speed, which is nice because of what they have in their glide ability. So you can kind of climb up something and kind of glide back down, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm surprised that there's a lot of kind of uproar on that when there's some species that can fly.
Well, the thing is that the glide was allowed. The way the glide was written was that they could glide an infinite. Basically, they could glide like 500 feet in a turn. It was a little silly the way it was written, so they just changed it to be a little bit better. That's all.
Totally. So how does he look like? I would say like humanoid, like apes.
Kind of. That's kind of like a.
Kind of what they look like to me.
I call them the flying squirrels because of the glide. They kind of like have that glide, but they do their art does mostly resemble the like apes and such like that.
So they also have some resilience. When you take damage, you can use your reaction to roll a d6, add your proficiency bonus to it, and you can reduce the damage that you take equal to the total. And of course, this is tied to number of times per day per your proficiency bonus, recharging on a long rest. Seems to be the theme with a lot of the new abilities.
Yeah, and I do like that they kind of, because a lot of these abilities in previous books were like once a day. Now at least you get a few uses a day. They're not as strong as the other ones, but even those other ones have kind of been updated to be more in line with the...
And it grows a bit over time, which is nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the next race, I mean, it's a pretty cool idea. They're plasmoids. So these are amorphous beings which typically have no shape. So you're basically like an ooze almost, but
which is their creature type.
Exactly. So you can choose to be medium or small when you first select the race. To be honest, I think it would be cooler if you could change it at will, but
it feels like you should be able to just based on a couple of things, but for some reason
no. They want you to pick.
They wanted you to kind of have that as you go.
Regardless, your walking speed is 30. But whether you're medium or small, they have a property called amorphous, which means they can squeeze through a space as narrow as 1 inch wide, provided you are wearing and carrying nothing. So
Bin all your equipment to the side, squeeze through the door, unlock it, come back to your party, get all your stuff back. I mean,
Sure.
it's an interesting little thing that they can do, much like gelatinous cubes or black puddings or a lot of the other creatures.
It says you also have advantage on ability checks you make to initiate or escape a grapple, just in general as well.
Well, it makes sense because they're kind of like a jelly people, so it's hard to grab onto.
Totally. Right? Totally. So I like that these guys got dark vision. Like, the Hadozi did not, the Gift did not, even the Autonomes did not.
No.
So it's nice to have another race here with dark vision.
Yeah, and I do like that they kind of have, like, as an action, they can kind of like reshape their body, which is really neat. You kind of like give themselves an extra head, or like, a couple arms, legs, the extra pseudopods that can be like 6 inches long. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, they also have resistance to acid and poison damage and advantage on saving throws against being poisoned, and they can also hold their breath for up to an hour.
All very handy stuff, especially in the Astral Sea, which is something we'll get to in a bit.
Yes. Okay, and then the last race that they've introduced is the Threekreen. Oh, sorry, Threekreen.
Yeah, Threekreen.
Threekreen, okay. Yeah, I suck at pronouncing that.
Yeah, some of these are like really hard to say.
Yeah, I like to think of them as insectoids.
Yes, they are bug people. They've got extra arms that much like ant or insect would. It's very interesting on that regard. I like that they've kind of, not everything is humanoid. The creature type for these are monstrosities.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. They're not like they've become brave and they're no longer saying, oh, everything's a humanoid. No, now they're kind of branching out, which opens up some extra little fun interactions, which is always nice.
Totally. Medium or small, choose it when you create it. Walking speed is 30 regardless. And, they have their own natural carapace, armor class 13 plus your dex. And you can change the color of it to match the color and texture of your surroundings, giving you advantage on stealth checks.
Yeah, so you kind of like blend into your surroundings and then kind of
it's really cool.
They're a very interesting race.
Yeah, they do get dark vision too.
The very interesting is they have their two main arms, and then they got a two set of like little T-Rex arms that can hold light weapons and such. That they can have like 4 swords. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, doesn't give you extra attacks, but
no,
it does
but
give you some extra options to be able to fight with.
It's also kind of like a really cool visual. You've got like a hammer in one hand, like a long sword in the other, a dagger in a third, and a short sword in another. It's just kind of
shield, right?
Shield in one of the main hands, because the shield doesn't have the light property, but the little hands, there's some interesting things that can kind of, like, you can even hold like a spellcasting focus.
Yep.
Like, it gives
hand crossbow.
It gives you a lot of interesting options. Hand crossbow is another one.
Totally. Yeah, we had actually quite the conversation going on about the extra arms this week on our Discord server.
It opens up a lot of interesting ideas, and I like that. But again, it just feels like one of those things where it's like, wow, that's actually really strong. But we'll see.
Totally. Yeah, you have advantage on stealth. You got dark vision. You can hold a bunch of stuff. I mean, you'd make a really good rogue fighter. Really, anything.
Like I said, the spellcaster, you can have that shield and not need warcaster because you got 3 extra hands.
Yeah, totally. So they have another feature where they don't need to sleep.
Yes.
So they can remain conscious during a long rest, but they still say you got to refrain from any strenuous activity and such, like most people, to gain the benefit of a rest.
The other thing is that they can't speak the non-Threekreen language. And they can only kind of project the languages they know telepathically. It's kind of interesting, and that's how they kind of given them the ability to speak.
Yeah, so this is one of those where you transmit your thoughts to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And they just need to understand at least one language that you too.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't sound to me like they can talk back to you, can they?
Not telepathically, but again, that's where like the languages come into play, right? You can understand.
Yeah, this is kind of, I got to be honest, if I met a creature like this in a non-D&D world, or maybe even D&D, I think I'd probably be afraid. You know, like
Yeah,
they
they
can't walk.
they and yeah, they don't. They basically in order to talk to the creatures do have to be willing that you're projecting your thoughts into. You can't
Yeah,
push
okay, good
yourself into the
point.
minds of other creatures, which is important to note because it's kind of like like when in Star Trek they're like end transmission and they kind of shut the screen off. You can absolutely do that to these three green.
Right, right. Good point. But just if they came up and they start clacking their mandibles and waving their antennae, is in terms of how they communicate. Yeah, I don't know. Oof. It would be interesting. To me, they sound like a real alien creature, not just D&D-ish. So yeah, that's all the races that were introduced in the Astral Adventurers Guide, which is the first of the 3 books here for 5e. So a lot of cool options just from races that can make for some really cool class combos for sure, like we mentioned.
Oh yeah, there's all like anytime they add new player options, I'm always really happy because I love doing things with characters and builds and such. And there's always little fun interactions you can find.
Totally. And then, gives you some new things to, make minis for, either like Hero Forge or something, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so the next thing we wanted to talk about was just like space in general and all the rules surrounding space. Again, the Astral Adventures Guide has lots of rules on these things, but we figured we'd start with how D&D treats space. So space is kind of broken into 2 like major overarching types of
Hmm.
space. So there's wild space, which is, I guess, kind of synonymous with like solar systems.
Yeah, it's basically like a planetary system kind of thing.
Yeah,
Usually a
exactly.
star, some planets.
Yeah, so of course, the one that they kind of introduce, although they also have rules for creating your own, and they have a couple of different ones that are in the hardcover adventure. But the one that they kind of use as an example is realm space. It's called realm space after the Forgotten Realms, of course. So that would include the solar system that Toril finds itself in. And so they have different rules for what happens in wild space in terms of how fast you travel and such. And then once you leave wild space, in older editions they were almost like these spheres or crystals, or but now they're more like solar systems that are kind of floating within a larger set of space, which is the astral plane itself. So
Yeah, like they like so basically the entire like astral sea is a giant space highway, effectively, that a lot of various things kind of float around in, and you get all the jamming ships, and you get like even the bodies of floating dead gods. It's all incredibly like open and available for whatever you want to do for your adventures.
yeah, so you can, once you're leaving whatever realm you decide to start your adventure in, you can literally go anywhere because the
Hmm.
astral space is literally connecting all the different realms together, and everything in between. When you move outside of wild space, you are traveling insanely fast.
Oh yeah.
So really, it makes it easy for DMs to kind of choose how they, kind of want to run things. Do they want to speed things up, slow things down, put obstacles in their way, all sorts of stuff like that.
Hmm.
But of course, you don't even have to leave the wild space, that you're in. You
Oh,
could have all sorts of adventures just in, one wild space area.
yeah, one wild space system, effectively. But yeah, the cool thing about that, you're saying how you're going super like hilariously fast when you're going through when you're basically spell jamming. You get to like as soon as you come across something else that has its own gravity, you immediately slow down, and that's how you know something's around. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'll slow down even coming into a realm
Hmm.
because going through um, you know space itself, you can travel up to 100 million miles in 24 hours.
Hmm.
So it's more about distance than it is about miles per hour or anything like that. So I have like, a bit of a confession to make. So Spelljammer ships are controlled by something called a Spelljammer helm. And I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, Angelo.
No, I
but
don't.
I thought it was a helmet, dude.
Oh no.
When I first read
No.
Spelljammer helm and it's a magic item, I'm just like, oh, okay, must be a helmet or something, right? Because
Oh no.
magic item. Yeah, don't worry, I figured it out when I just kept reading the next sentence. But it's just like helmet short for helmet. I wasn't thinking, I'm at the
Like,
con
the helm
on
of a
the
ship.
starship or whatever. Yeah, it's the helm of the ship. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, Spelljammer helm. Okay, there you go. Everyone can have a good laugh about that one. But yeah, so Spelljammer vessels or ships are controlled by Spelljammer helm. So it is a magic item. It does require attunement by a spellcaster most of the time. And yeah, and there's a lot of flavor that can be given to the magic item because it could be very ornate, it could be more fantastical, it could be organic, it can be like kind of anything you want it to be. But it could be a throne, it could have a huge console in front of it. Like you're only limited by your imagination as to what the object really looks like. So I'm gonna make mine a helmet one day. Why not? Like Professor Xavier, right?
Yeah, like if you're thinking Cerebro as
Cerebro.
opposed to
Yeah. So like that's gonna be my Spelljammer helm. When I make my own ship. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't help it there, but so yeah, if you want to control one of these Spelljammer ships, it's not like you need some massive crew, like a sail ship or a sailing ship. You really need someone that can, basically be your pilot and attune to this object and, use it to basically run the ship.
Yep.
So when you're using it, you can move through space or air or water up to the ship's speed, because basically the speed of the ship is going to be the same in all of those.
Yeah, each ship has its own speed when it's not going through basically through space.
Yeah, so attaching one of these to regular ship essentially makes it a spelljamming ship.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, so the ships in spelljamming could be a sailing ship that has had a spelljamming helm attached to it and such.
Now the Star Galleons are basically just giant regular ships that have sails that kind of fan out and act like wings almost with a spelljamming helm.
Yeah,
Much
so
like your falling star that you have, just also
exactly. Yeah, if you have the mini of the falling star, you could just use that as a spelljamming ship.
Mhm.
If you have some cool Lego sets of of the many different ships, sailing ships and stuff, pirate ships, really whatever you want. It could even be more space like, if you want to pull out like a TIE fighter or something. I don't know, like really and anything essentially.
like
If you
skiffs
got
could
the
basically be
Spelljammers
TIE
helm on
fighters.
it, yeah, you could totally just hook that up and you're good to go. So
The difference between so as we're talking about spelljammers, so when you're in space, the reason why it's not like real space where it's like a cold dark vacuum where you basically freeze to death as soon as you were in space, but before you suffocated you'd freeze to death because there's no heat and it's just way too cold. But in Spelljammer, the kind of it's just no air. It's not this
exactly.
freezing dark wasteland. It's just no air.
Yeah, except the air that you bring with you, so to speak, right?
Each body has its own air bubble, including for example, if I was shot into space, or if we have our fancy human artificer who's named X Ample, he basically could get blasted out into space and would have an air bubble around him that would last around 1 minute. Once that air bubble was used up, then he would start to suffocate. But until then, you could breathe out in space with the air that you brought with you.
Yeah, and those are called air envelopes. So there's this envelope of breathable air that forms around like any creature or like a spelljamming ship as well. And it's this big bubble. And so they have rules for it. Depending on your size, it kind of determines how much of this air envelope is around you, kind of like as a cube. And when it comes to like air envelopes around objects, like planets, being an object, they give the
Spelljammer.
example. Yeah, oh yeah. So they give an example that like a spherical planet that's like 5,000 miles in diameter would have an air envelope that's basically 15,000 miles in diameter, which is like, times 3, with the planet at the kind of center of that. So with a ship, it's pretty much the same. You have this huge bubble that's like 3 times your size, kind of all around you. And so when you kind of leave a place that has air, like a planet, you have what's called fresh air. It's completely breathable, and around your ship, it would remain fresh for up to 120 days. So when you're traveling 100 million miles per day, you could travel pretty far with that.
Yeah.
And then you go into a stage which they call foul air. I don't know if you want to talk about this one.
Yeah, so basically after you've been in wild, so say you got stranded and you're stuck out in wild space for more than 120 days, on day 121 your air would turn foul, and basically you'd be able to still survive, but you would have the poison condition just for breathing this air. And you would have that condition until you found fresh air to breathe in another air envelope or something like that. So you would still survive. It was just suck for the entire time, which would be another 120 days where that lasts.
Yeah. And I mean, that could be an expensive trip if you want to get rid of the poison condition every day.
You can't, because as soon as you breathe the air again, you're poisoned.
Unless you're immune.
Yeah, so if you're immune to poison, like for example,
Heroes Feast is what I was
like,
getting.
if you wanted to keep casting Heroes Feast, I was thinking more of like if you were a plasmoid and you had immunity to poison, you can kind of exist in that foul air and be just fine. Monks also have that ability at higher levels. They're magic items, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So basically on day 241, the air is unbreathable. It's considered to be deadly, and you basically start to suffocate.
Yep.
But I mean, I don't know why you'd be in a situation like that, to be honest.
You could just get stuck. I mean, there are things that could happen.
Yeah. But when two objects that have their own air envelopes kind of, and again, it extends about 3 times your total length out from the center of where you are, they can overlap. And when they overlap, they merge. And the quality of the air around the smaller body will match that of the larger. So, I mean, that could be potentially a tactic to poison a smaller ship if you had foul air, if that's what you wanted to do, I suppose.
Or if you didn't need to breathe and you have deadly air and you kind of pop into an area that, it starts to get really awful real quick.
Get nasty.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now,
so, but you can refresh your air by, entering an area that has fresh air. So again, just like the example where we're talking about a larger ship and a smaller ship. Well, if you go to a planet, I would assume that the planet's probably larger than your ship.
Yeah, unless you got the Death Star, and even then,
that's no moon.
That's no moon.
But yeah, if you come, into contact with its air envelope, it's larger than you. Hopefully, it's got fresh air, and you're kind of recharged that way.
Yeah. So the next thing, kind of like on our list of things for Spelljammer that are really cool, is I love talking about the gravity mechanic in Spelljammer. The gravity mechanic in Spelljammer is really funny.
Yeah, and it is more of a it is a game mechanic. We're not talking physics here.
No,
So
yeah. So like, throw physics out the window. We're not doing any sorts
please.
of like little g calculations, 9.8 meters per second down, or anything like that. It doesn't apply in Spelljammer. So we're gonna bring back our friend X Ample, who gets shot out into space, and say a solar dragon kind of flies along, and while X Ample is floating in space. Well, now the solar dragon has a higher kind of center, higher mass than X Ample here. So now basically everything that happens to X Ample will match the solar dragon. So gravity works on a plane much like it does kind of like on Earth, except the plane on Earth is the ground. And we cannot kind of go above it without some sort of propulsion that allows us to do so. Spelljammer kind of has that similar idea of a plane, but instead of only going in one direction, so if you were here, you'd be falling towards the solar dragon in space. But as soon as you got to this area, you kind of blow downward and like hit to a certain point, and then you'd be coming back up, and you'd be just kind of oscillating here along this center plane, which is to me just really funny to think about. If someone gets booted off a Spelljammer and they're just kind of doing this in the air around the ship while it's kind of flying, be kind of a fun little rescue mission to try to go get them back onto the ship.
Totally. Yeah.
Because
That's where
momentum is
flying,
a thing. Yeah.
that's where flying speed probably comes in handy.
Oh yeah. Definitely could use a flying speed.
Yeah. Did you want to mention anything else about gravity?
Well, basically just any gravity, basically much like the air envelopes, the bigger gravity plane kind of takes over for the other one. Propulsion still works. So for example, if you're jamming through the space, you're not going to go careening towards a planet. You're going to be able to kind of float above it because you have propulsion. But as soon as you're free falling,
out whoever's attuned to the Spelljammer helm.
Well, that was the cool thing about Spelljammer duels that we never really talked about. But yeah, you can have kind of two people. You have a second Spelljammer on your ship, and you can use that to try to take control of the other ship. And you have a Spelljammer duel where you basically have a contested ability check, where it's a Constitution check. Actually, it's not any of your usual spellcasting stats, and whoever wins out on that basically has control of the ship, and the other person gets a whole bunch of levels of exhaustion, automatically unattunes to it, and cannot attune to it while they're exhausted.
1d4 levels of exhaustion.
Yeah. So you hit that 4 levels of exhaustion, you can't Spelljam for 4 days.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, oof.
Yeah, oof is right.
Yeah. It's pretty brutal for sure. So, why would you Spelljam? Like, why do you want to Spelljam? How do you Spelljam? And by that, I mean, how are you going to, play this stuff, right? So, you want to get yourself a party. And if you want to start at level 1, and there are some free adventures that came out about a month ahead of the hardcover book, Light of Xeraxis, that can help you get to level 5. It's called Spelljammer Academy. They're free on D&D Beyond, and they're also Adventures League legal.
So, yeah, that was also a nice bonus if you do like to play Adventures League and like to have your roaming characters.
Yeah, especially if they're roaming through space. And we're using the so-called Season 12 rules or Version 12 rules of Adventures League currently. They say they're for the Forgotten Realms, but they apply to the Spelljammer Academy as well. And like I said, you can play through those. You level up pretty much after each of the 4 chapters, which gets you to level 5, which is where the Light of Xeraxis hardcover adventure starts, if you wanted to play it that way. There are
level 5.
You could just start at level 5. You could play another campaign like maybe
Lost Mines, Icewind Dale, or sorry, Dragons, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, Icespire Peak, Dragons of Icespire Peak.
Yes, or what's the new starter set called?
Shipwreck Isle. I want to say.
Yeah. Shipwreck Isle. Play through that. Lost Mine of Fandelver is another good one. They're actually turning that into a full hardcover, eh?
Oh, that's amazing! Like that's always got a special place in my heart because that was the first thing I played in of D&D, like in general, all D&D.
So regardless of how you get to level 5, obviously there's a lot of options, and whether it's Adventures League or not, you can then pick up, this Light of Xeraxis book. It's broken into different parts, and each part has a few chapters. Chapters are very short, all right, and there's been a lot of criticism early on from it, and like the criticism is so early. I'm like, I don't think you've played this, and I
Yeah.
kind of wonder if the people that are criticizing it are even, uh, if they're reading it more from a player's perspective than perhaps a dungeon master's perspective. Because I gotta say that I found the writing extremely tight,
Mhm.
and by that I mean, I could take like half a page of content from one of these chapters, and I could be spending hours with the players running through it.
Yeah, it was all very, very, very like you gave you a lot and not a lot of writing. It was just very well done.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to speed run a hardcover. We're trying to play a role-playing game. So, there's a lot of dangers in the book without giving too much away, like at every turn. And so, like play to those things, like take people, kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I mean,
Let
you
them
got
make the choices that they want to.
yep.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, of course, there can be a ton of random encounters as well. But yeah, I think it's very dungeon master friendly.
Mhm.
So many DMs, like even during their one D&D presentation, talking about everyone's a lazy DM. I mean, some more than others, perhaps. But yeah, I mean, I want to
I
play the
run
game. Like
I run hardcovers or published content. I don't write my own. I don't have the headspace or time for it for the most part. Unless I'm writing like something to
yeah,
publish, which I've done once, and I'm thinking about doing again for Spelljammer because it's that
well,
interesting.
that's awesome. Well, like any setting book, and you kind of have a rules book to go along with it as well. There's a lot you can do there. So I
Um,
would definitely recommend, playing this adventure after, if you're new to D&D and you want to run through something to get you to level 5 first, and then jump into it. Or if you just want something fun, because it is a fun adventure.
yeah, you could, like I said, there was nothing wrong with just starting at level 5, like the book says. Make a level 5 character with your group and be like, yeah, let's go to space because
Why not?
it's gonna be pretty fun. So the last thing we didn't really talk about that we have to talk about is the ships and all the different
Oh,
vessels.
totally. Yeah, that's a great point. So yeah, we talked a little such that you could put a Spelljammer helm on pretty much like anything, but the Astral Adventures guide does have a whole section on like different types of vessels, and I know your favorite is actually the first one on the list alphabetically.
I mean, the the gift bombard is just hilarious. It's got this massive cannon that's kind of like on the front of the ship that just blows things out of the air. It is the strongest of the ships in terms of firepower, and it's just really kind of like along
That
the
makes
line.
sense for the GIF.
Yeah, they're the black powder specialists, as we touched on earlier, right? So they're going to have the biggest guns and sort of thing. It's a lot of
It's
fun with that.
basically a ship built around a cannon.
Yeah, effectively. Think the Death Star, except like a sailing ship.
Yeah.
But
But yeah, some of the ships have some really cool, I guess, shapes, if you will. Like the Damesfly ship is the next one on the list, which looks like a fly.
damselfly. But
Oh, what do I know?
yeah,
I'm gonna pronounce everything wrong, and I'll still stick to Artificer.
it hurts.
Yep. Um, yeah, they also have. Well, I mean, I don't want to skip ahead too much, but one of my favorite ships and a ship that we've seen in Baldur's Gate 3, the video game, the
Mhm.
Nautiloid.
There's also a
Right?
Dungeon and Dragons epic that you kind of have to defeat one of those. It's really fun.
Totally. So they look like almost like a giant kind of shell, or like a snail shell, if you will,
Tentacles all
with,
coming out
with
of
a
it.
kind of a ship coming right out of it and has tentacles and stuff. And yeah, if you've played Baldur's Gate 3 on PC, you know, the game essentially starts with one of those blasting through Baldur's Gate. It's pretty awesome.
But yeah, like we don't have to go through every ship. We just kind of touch
Oh,
on
no.
certain ones.
Yeah.
The standard one that kind of like everybody has, kind of like when you think of Spelljammer, or like even on the front cover, is the Space Galleon.
Yeah.
It's basically a galleon ship with extra sails that goes through space because it has a spelljamming helm.
Yeah, they also have a turtle ship.
Yep, they've got a lot of like, you know, very what it is in the name kind of ships. Like
Yep.
they've got the turtle ship, the wasp ship, the scorpion ship,
Squid
ship, lamprey ship,
night spider.
Yeah, they've got some. Then they all like my personal like actual like favorite design, as opposed to just I love the gift gun bombard just because of the giant cannon. But in
Yeah.
terms of actual design, the Star Moth is actually my favorite. It's got this
Oh.
like really cool like wing pattern that kind of hooks down and looks really like kind of imposing. The head of it's this like really intricate looking ram. It's just like a really kind of like fancy looking ship that I kind of really enjoy.
I'm still gonna go with Nautiloid. I still want to play a Mind Flayer. You know, where's the Mind Flayer playable race, please?
I mean, it's just like it's hard to have someone in your party that just wants to eat brains.
I guess, but at the same time, I mean, like, you know,
they can figure something out.
All Mind Flayers evil?
Well, I never said evil. I said, but they still have to eat.
Yeah,
it depends on they just have to kind of figure out what it is they eat instead.
Yeah, brain puppies are adorable.
Everybody loves it. Like nothing scares a party barbarian or fighter.
Yeah,
as much as one of the brain puppies or intellect.
Yeah, if anyone knows where to find like a brain puppy with like, you know, like a stick for a leash or something, I need one of those for my, you know, my cosplay as a Mind Flayer.
Hey, that's actually it's because you had a pretty good tell that to the tadpoles in your head exactly, because that's how Mind Flayers breed. They and Mind Flayers are actually a fixture in the Astral Sea. That's where they're from. So you're going to, if you see a Nautiloid kind of coming at you from behind, must go faster.
or it's going to be a fight to the death probably.
Yeah.
So what are some other races, now that, you know, we mentioned that you might want to inject in your Spelljammer campaign that have come from other books?
Yeah, so my favorite of them is the Githyanki. I love playing Githyanki, like kind of like characters. Githyanki, like it's just one of my favorites. I love the whole kind of like they're quite militaristic. They're quite kind of like built for like effectively they were built to fight Mind Flayers. They broke away from them and freed themselves from the Mind Flayers who had them enslaved for eons, and now are like engaged in a eons long war in the Astral Sea, where they basically just breed and fight and breed and fight and breed and fight, and that's most of what they do.
I think I'd be a Githzerai.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's the Githyanki and the Githzerai. I prefer the Githyanki.
Yeah. So, moral of the story here is get out and play Spelljammer. It's a lot of fun. We'll actually, with Unite the Factions, be running some of it probably next month at the Mississauga Comic Expo. So again, if you want to check that out, check out our website.
If you find yourselves in the GTA on that weekend, come say hi and add to us at
Mississauga event too.
Yep.
All right, so thanks everybody for joining us that did, and for, you know, all the fun laughs here in the chat. That was pretty cool. Oh, actually, Jeff's gonna be running Spelljammer for sure.
Yeah, he actually ran Spelljammer at Fan Expo for us.
Yeah,
it was a good time.
We love you too, Jeff. All right, so I guess that's a wrap. And I think next month we'll probably do a Monster of the Month game and chat about what that monster might be. So stay tuned for that on the Fan Meetups website.
Yep, definitely gonna have an idea of maybe some Spelljammer themed monsters, because I mean, I'm in love with Spelljammer. I love the setting so much.
Totally. All right, so thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again later. Bye for now.